In the beginning, there lived a man named Joseph, one of 12 sons born to Jacob in a land of Canaan. Joseph was deeply loved by his father, who gave him a beautiful coat of many colors, a gift that sparkled with crimson, azure, and gold threads woven together like a sunset over the desert hills. This coat made his brothers burn with jealousy, for they saw in it their father's favoritism shining as bright as the noonday sun. Joseph was a dreamer, blessed with visions that came to him in the quiet hours of night. And one morning, he told his brothers of a dream where their sheaves of grain bowed down to his sheaf in the field. Another time, he dreamed that the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed before him. And when he shared these dreams, his brothers' hearts grew harder still, filled with resentment that festered like a wound left untended. One day, when Joseph was sent by his father to check on his brothers tending sheep in the distant fields of Dothan, they saw him coming from afar, his colorful coat visible like a banner in the wilderness. Their anger had been simmering for so long that it now boiled over into a terrible plot. "Here comes the dreamer," they said to one another with bitter tongues. "Let us kill him and throw him into a pit, and we will say that a wild beast devoured him, and we shall see what becomes of his dreams." But Reuben, the eldest, hearing this murderous plan, felt his conscience stir within him like wind rustling through olive branches, and he persuaded them instead to cast Joseph into an empty cistern in the wilderness, secretly planning to rescue him later and return him safely to their father. When Joseph reached his brothers, full of innocent trust and carrying their father's greetings, they seized him roughly, stripped him of his precious coat of many colors, and threw him into the dark pit where he called out in fear and confusion, his voice echoing off the stone walls. As his brothers sat down to eat their meal, callous to his cries, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelite merchants approaching, their camels loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, traveling the ancient trade route toward Egypt. Judah spoke up then, saying, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites instead, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our own flesh." And so they pulled Joseph from the pit, his face streaked with tears and dust, and sold him for 20 pieces of silver to the merchants who bound him and took him away toward a foreign land. The brothers then took Joseph's beautiful coat, killed a young goat, and dipped the garment in its blood until the colors ran dark and terrible. They brought it to their father Jacob, and when the old man saw it, his heart shattered into 1,000 pieces like pottery thrown against stone. "It is my son's coat," Jacob cried out in anguish. "A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." And Jacob tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and mourned for his beloved son many days, refusing all comfort from his children, saying, "I shall go down to the grave mourning for my son." And his grief hung over the household like a heavy cloud. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. And though he was now a slave in a strange land far from home, the Lord was with Joseph, and everything he did prospered in his hands. Potiphar saw that the Lord blessed all that Joseph touched, and he made him overseer of his entire household, trusting him with everything he owned. But Potiphar's wife looked upon Joseph with desire, for he was handsome in form and appearance, and day after day she tempted him, saying, "Lie with me." But Joseph refused, saying, "How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Yet she persisted, until one day she caught him by his garment, and Joseph fled, leaving his cloak in her hand and running from the house. In her anger and wounded pride, she falsely accused him, and Potiphar, believing his wife, had Joseph thrown into the Pharaoh's prison, where he languished in darkness. But even in prison, the Lord remained with Joseph, granting him favor with the prison keeper, who put him in charge of all the prisoners. In time, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker offended their master and were thrown into the same prison where Joseph served them, and both men had troubling dreams on the same night. Joseph, seeing their troubled faces in the morning light, asked them what was wrong, and they told him of their dreams. "Do not interpretations belong to God?" Joseph said gently. "Tell me your dreams." And God gave Joseph the wisdom to interpret their visions correctly. The cupbearer would be restored to his position in 3 days, but the baker would be hanged. Joseph asked only that the cupbearer remember him when he was restored to Pharaoh's service. But when everything happened exactly as Joseph said, the cupbearer forgot about Joseph for 2 full years, until Pharaoh himself had troubling dreams that none of his wise men could interpret. Then the cupbearer's memory was stirred, and he told Pharaoh about the Hebrew prisoner who could interpret dreams. And Joseph was hastily brought from the dungeon, shaved and given clean clothes. Standing before the mighty Pharaoh, he heard the dreams of 7 fat cows devoured by 7 lean ones, and 7 plump heads of grain swallowed by 7 thin ones. And God revealed to Joseph that Egypt would experience 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of terrible famine. Joseph advised Pharaoh to appoint a wise administrator to store grain during the plentiful years, to prepare for the famine ahead. And Pharaoh, recognizing God's spirit in Joseph, said, "Can we find anyone like this man in whom is the Spirit of God?" And so Pharaoh placed his own signet ring on Joseph's finger, dressed him in fine linen, put a gold chain around his neck, and made him second in command over all Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered Pharaoh's service, and during the 7 years of plenty, he gathered grain like the sand of the sea, so much that he stopped measuring it. And when the famine came, it spread across all lands, but Egypt had bread. Joseph's brothers, driven by hunger in Canaan, came to Egypt to buy grain, bowing before the governor, not recognizing him that he was Joseph, their lost little brother, and seeing his dreams from so many years ago finally coming true. And though Joseph wept in private, remembering his father and his younger brother Benjamin, he tested his brothers to see if their hearts had changed. And after much tribulation and revelation, finally Joseph revealed himself to them, saying, through tears, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" His brothers were terrified, but Joseph comforted them, saying, "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life, and what you meant for evil, God meant for good, to save many people alive." And so they pulled Joseph from the pit, his face streaked with tears and dust, and sold him for 20 pieces of silver to the merchants, who bound him took him away toward a foreign land. Jacob and all his family came down to Egypt, 70 souls in all, and Joseph provided for them in the land of Goshen, and the old father was reunited with the son he thought was dead, and they wept together in an embrace that held all the lost years and all the restored hope. And Jacob said, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." And Joseph's story became a testament of faithfulness, forgiveness, and God's sovereign purpose working through even the darkest of human betrayals to bring about redemption and life. Sleep now, dear child, and rest in the knowledge that God can turn our trials to triumphs, our mourning to dancing, and our broken dreams into beautiful realities that shine brighter than any coat of many colors ever could.